Greetings. Rajee here. Just having a little snack. I think you might want to grab a snack and sit down. I'm getting ready to go deep, honey. Mm. Okay, so this last week, I've been thinking about my dad a lot. And it hit me today. Oh, no wonder I'm thinking about my dad a lot. Last Tuesday, September 13th, 2016, would have been my father's 74th birthday. My dad passed away, this December is going to be 12 years. He passed away 2 days before Christmas, December 23rd, 2004. Now, my dad and I would have to say, we had a pretty volatile relationship. And for most of our lives together, we weren't very close. Okay, my dad, of course, had his issues like we all do. My dad loved to drink, so he was a bit of an alcoholic, and but a functioning one. And he loved the women, so my mom certainly had a time in that whole area with him. But one thing that was like really, really wonderful about my father is he was an excellent provider. Oh my God, this man took care of his family. He would get up every day and go to work, and he definitely provided for us. Gotta give him that. My father had a very serious side, but he also had a, oh my God, it just started storming and thundering and raining. Hold on, Dad. Let me finish the story, okay? But yeah, but my dad also had, even though he had a very serious side, he had a very fun side. He could oftentimes be what you call the life of the party, especially when he got together with his buddies. Um, he played cricket. My father loved the English game of cricket. He loved cricket, okay? And so when he would get together with his cricket buddies and they'd be partying and everything, he could be, a lot of fun. And I definitely saw that actually at his funeral. Like, some of his cricket buddies came out to the funeral, and when I heard them speak about the fun times they had with my dad, it really like hit me. I was like, wow, my dad was really a firecracker, and a lot of people enjoyed him. So, okay, now I definitely had my intimate, loving moments with my father. One that I can remember, I'd say my earliest memory of a loving, tender moment with my dad would have been about, I was probably about the age of 1.5. Oh, yeah. I can't believe it sometimes. I have memories all the way back to about 1 years of age. I can't believe it. 1 years old, and I can remember some things. But I was. It was bedtime. The lights had been turned off, and I remember I started crying. And my dad turned to me, and he was in the bed, like we were all in the bed, and he says to me, uh, "Are you scared?" And I guess I said yes or shook my head or whatever, and um, I remember him like hugging me up close, and he's saying to me, "Don't worry, Daddy's gonna take care of you. You'll be okay. You don't have to be afraid." And I drifted off to sleep, and that was my earliest memory of a loving, tender moment with my father. Uh, then, of course, it was the times where his buddies would come over. My parents would have like get-togethers or parties, and my dad would call me when the music was playing, the Indian music especially, and he would call me to dance for everyone. And oh yes, honey, I was lights, camera, action at like 2 years old. Okay. No, but it made me feel good because it made me feel like, oh, my dad wants to like show me off, basically, and so that was really sweet. I would say a sweet memory for me to have those moments where he would call me to perform or dance for his friends. Um, but yeah, for the most part, I didn't have like very many sweet, tender moments with my dad, and especially after my sister was born. But you know, not to blame my sister; it's not her fault. She's actually 4 years younger than me, and when my sister came along, it was almost like I really did become my dad's stepchild. But my sister was just being, her sweet, cute little self, and she was being Daddy's little girl. That's what she was. She was my father's little princess, and me, I was getting older, and I think my dad was starting to see behavior in me that he probably wasn't expecting to see from a son. And he didn't really know how to handle it, or to even be able to accept it. So, yeah, oh my gosh, I actually became very afraid of my dad at a young age. Oh my God, I was really scared of my father. And I got to know my dad's belt very early on, and not the strap side, the buckle side, okay? I remember like being laying down and my mom rubbing like Vaseline on the whelps that I had gotten on my legs from being beaten by my dad. And I don't know, my dad just, he would come home angry, like he just was, oh my God, like about to explode, and just really in a bad mood and angry and ready to like jump at any little thing when it came to me. And I think I could say overall I was a pretty good kid. I didn't get in much trouble. Well, hell, I was terrified too, okay? So I didn't get in much trouble, but just for whatever reason, any little thing, it was like he was waiting for me to do something that he could just explode on me and go and just beat me. And oh my God, one time it was so bad. I guess I was screaming and crying so bad that the neighbors heard me. And I remember the next day being outside playing, and my neighbor, uh, actually my neighbor's father, said to me, "Are you okay?" And even my friend at the time, well, my couple friends were there, and we were all playing, and they all looked at me and said, "Yeah, are you okay?" They're like, "We heard you last night." And in those days, honey, there was, let me tell you, what do they say? What's that saying? I can't even remember the saying now, but let's just say parents beat their kids, okay? And there was nothing about child abuse or anything really at that time. So people, they were concerned, but they pretty much stayed out of it. So it was an embarrassing moment for me, though. I was so embarrassed. So anyway, I really felt like during that time in my life, I couldn't do anything right. I didn't walk right, talk right, eat right, breathe right from my dad. Everything was an issue, it seemed. And so much so, like, even like my eighth grade graduation, I received the most awards out of all the students in the graduating class. I think it was about 7 or 8 awards. And I even got the most prestigious award that was only given to one student in the graduating class, and that happened to be me. And I remember them calling my name and me standing up, and my whole class stood up for me. The audience, like all the family and friends that had come, they stood up. And it was so overwhelming in that moment, I started crying. So, anyway, graduation is over, and all the kids are running to see their parents. And I get to my mom, and at that point, my dad was walking out the door, and uh, my mom was like, she congratulated me, and she says, "Well, let's go. We better go because your dad's ready." And when we get to the car, like he looks so angry, and no congratulations, no, I'm proud of you. We were supposed to go out to dinner for my graduation to a Chinese restaurant. And my father said we weren't going, that we were going home. He didn't feel like going to the restaurant anymore. And I was really disappointed. And I remember my mom, like she often did growing up, trying to make it better in her own way. And she's saying to me, "Don't worry, I'll go get the Chinese food and I'll bring it home for you." And that was okay, but like the whole point was it was my graduation dinner and I wanted to go out. But anyway, I just couldn't understand why my dad was so angry. Like, I'm thinking, my God, I got like 7, 8 awards, like the most out of any of the other kids. Like, why are you so mad at me? What did I do wrong? And as an adult, I kind of, yeah, I guess, in my therapy, because I've worked through a lot of issues. I'm still working through some, but I often would think about that time, that graduation night, and why my dad acted that way. And I could be incorrect in saying this, but I think I'm right. My dad could not take the fact that his son cried in front of all those people. He was embarrassed by it, that I got emotional and cried. And I believe that it, he didn't like the fact that I did that, and that's what got him angry. So anyway, I also know that that situation did not help me in my life, because for a young child, 8th grade graduation, you get 7 or 8 awards, and your father is still not happy about it. Like he's still like, if that's not good enough, that told me that nothing is good enough. Like I could never do anything good enough to make him happy. I mean, that was, I think, the message that I got from that a moment, or how I perceived it, or interpreted it. That's the message that I got from that. But anyway, life goes on. I'm growing up, and I'm out of high school now, and I'm a young adult, and things really began to get very turbulent between my dad and I. Like, well, okay, mind you, I'm no longer a little kid. I'm now a young adult. I'm working, I'm going to school, and I'm becoming more of myself, who I am. And I'm also speaking up when he would do things like to my mom, or say something that wasn't nice to my mom. Sometimes I would chime in and like speak up for my mom. And of course, he didn't like that. So we were clashing. And I remember this one particular time that was like the straw that broke the camel's back. We weren't getting along at all, and there was a family event, went over, there was a big argument that took place. And I can't really get into all the details, because just for the fact that I don't want this video to be like a half an hour to 45 minutes long. If you want the juicy details, you have to get my book, okay? Beyond Face Value, so you can get all the juicy details. But there was an argument that happened over at my uncle's house, and between my dad and I and my uncle, and I stormed out, and I remember that night in my bed, laying in my bed, and hearing my father screaming at the top of his lungs to my mom that this is his house, and if I don't like it, I can get the fuck out. And I laid in my bed, and I was crying, and I said to myself, I have to leave. This is not my home anymore. And I didn't want to leave my mom and my sister, but I just knew that I couldn't stay there because if I did, it was going to be something bad. Like either I was going to get hurt or my dad was going to get hurt or both of us was going to get hurt. There wasn't anything good coming out of me staying at home. And so a few days later, I was gone. I left home and never went back. And there was a couple years that went by that I didn't even talk to my dad. But being the person that I am, one day I just thought to myself, life is too short. I'm gone now. I left home and, I have to move on with my life. And so I wrote a letter to my dad and basically a kind of let bygones be bygones letter. And that started the communication again between us. But we never really were close after the letter. I mean, I would say we were cordial with each other, and time went by, and it was pretty much that way up until a few months before my dad passed away. The summer of 2004, my dad got really sick, and I I remember feeling really upset about it and just very concerned because, you know, I loved my father. I loved him, and I was calling every day, like with my mom. He was in the hospital, and he was actually in the hospital just about the entire summer. The doctors were saying to my mom that he probably wasn't going to make it, and I was calling every day, checking in, and eventually my dad came through it, and he ended up going to like a rehabilitation center, and it was a miracle that my dad lived. He had a number of health issues, and it was really from the many years of drinking and smoking. It just, after a while, that shit catches up to you. And he was pretty sick, but he made it through. He was in the rehab, and I remember me calling and him starting to want to get on the phone and like talk to me more. And then he ended up going back home. Now, mind you, he lost a leg by this time, so one of his legs was amputated because of a circulatory disease that he had, and so he's home now. But like, I'm calling to check in with my mom, and I can hear him in the background asking my mom if it's me, and that he wants to talk to me. So we started talking, and let me tell you, my father and I think, had more communication in those few months than we had ever really communicated our whole entire lives together. From when I was born all the way up to that point. And he was just like, just really, you could tell he was really trying to get close with me and connect with me. And there were moments where I'd actually have to look at the phone and like, I was saying to myself, is this my father? Because some of the stuff he was saying. And I remember about a few weeks before my dad died, we were on the phone, and my dad said to me, out of the blue, he just blurted it out. He's like, I want you to come home. And he says, you've been gone too long. And he started crying. And he said to me, I worked my whole life. And he says, what do you think I worked my whole life for? He said, for you and your sister. And he said, this is your house. And I was listening, and I was like, I almost speechless. He says, you've been gone too long, and I really want you to come home, and I want to see you. Now, I had sent pictures, like, through the years, and I was in contact. I mean, I was always, like, calling my mom and, like, connected with home. but I hadn't been home in a long time. And I said, so I had just started a job. And honestly, to be honest, I was scared to go home because I had transitioned so much. And at that point, I was finally getting from my dad what I had always wanted my whole life. And I felt like if I go home, I might mess it up because I didn't know if my dad could handle seeing me in the live and in living color. I mean, it's one thing to look at pictures, it's another thing when the person's in front of you. And I told him, I said, you know, and it wasn't a lie because I just started a job and I didn't have any time to take to go home. So it was a legitimate excuse. But also behind that excuse was the fact that I was scared to go. And so I told him, I said, listen, I just started this job and I don't really have any time, but let me work and build up some time. And in the spring, I'll come and visit. And he was like, well, okay, but he wanted me to come then, it was like, so about, I'd say 2 more weeks later, um, we were on the phone again, and out of the blue, we're just talking, and he says to me, he says, I just wish I knew you were going to be okay. And I said to him, I said, like, I didn't really understand what he meant by that. And he's like, me and your mom, we won't always be here for you. And he says, I just wish I knew that you were going to be okay in this world the way you are. He says, because people can be so mean and cruel. And he says, I know they can especially be that way towards someone like you. And in that moment, it really solidified for me that, to the core, what our parents really want for us is they want a better life. I'm sorry. They want to know that. I'm sorry. They want to know that we're going to be okay and we're going to be happy and we're going to be able to live a good life. Through all the good, the bad, and the ugly of it, at the core, I believe that that's really what all our parents want for us. So oh my God. I didn't know I was going to get this emotional. I'm sorry, guys. But so I told him, I know, Dad. And I mean, what could I really say? And the thing is I had to be, I have to be me. It's like, well, I understand you're worried, and I understand that, yes, it is a hard life, but what am I supposed to do? Like, go hide under a rock? Like, this is me, and I have to live this life as hard as it has been, and as hard as it will continue to be. I mean, you're living your authentic truth, and that's just all you can do, basically. So, anyway, I remember that so vividly, and I just, that was like our last really, I would say, profound conversation. Like, another week or so later, my dad passed away. And when he passed away, I thought to myself, wow, he was wanting me to come home, and I just couldn't do it. And I have to live with that the rest of my life. But at the same time, I also rejoiced and I thanked God. I thank God because I finally got what I wanted from my dad all these years. We finally connected, and it was like that full circle moment that we had. And I'm so thankful that I had that, because I think his death would have hit me a lot harder. It would have been a lot more difficult for me to deal with if I didn't have that moment with my dad. I went home for the funeral, and I only could get 3 days bereavement. So it was like I flew home one day, the next day with the funeral, and literally the next day I was flying back to South Florida because I had just started my job, so I had no time. But anyway, my dad came to me a couple weeks later after the funeral in a dream, and it was so beautiful. Growing up, we would go to Fairmount Park. That's where he played cricket, and they had like a clubhouse and everything. And in the clubhouse, old clubhouse, and there were pictures on the wall of all the old cricketers that had played there. And in the dream, I'm walking and I'm looking at the pictures, going down the wall and looking at the pictures. And when I get to the last picture, it's my dad. Frame, nice frame, and he's in there in the picture, and he's sitting on a bench, and he's young again. He was like how he looked in his prime, and he had his white cricket uniform on, and the bat, and he was holding it, and he looked at me, and he nodded his head and winked, and I believe that was my dad's way of telling me, look, I'm fine, I'm in heaven playing cricket, I'm happy. You know, I could probably go my whole life wondering why things were the way they were between my dad and I, and never really, you know, come up with like a definite answer. My sister was daddy's little girl, and I guess I was daddy's little faggot. It is what it is. I think about my dad immigrating to the United States and the pressure of like him coming here to try and live the American dream. I think about the fact that my dad was a Virgo and I'm an Aries. I think about the fact that my dad was more of an optimist and I'm sorry, my dad was more of a pessimist and I'm more of an optimist. I think about, the pressures of being a man and having a family to support and just all of that. And me being the way I was born and not being the son that he probably pictured he would have one day. Just a lot of things that I guess I could sit here and say were reasons why things were the way they were between him and I. But basically, it is what it is. And just, I've had to be able to come to terms and accept that. It is what it is. Um, but what I do know for sure is that I miss him. I miss him. And I'm so grateful for all of the positive ways he touched my life. One thing that I connected with after he died, it hit me like a ton of bricks, was the fact that I realized that a lot of my strength that I've needed to live as a transgender woman in society, I got from him. I got from my dad. That whole determination to prove to my dad that, you know what, yes, I am this way, and you might not like it, but I'm going to make it anyway. That somehow infused into strength that I needed to endure all that I've been through. And so, that rose, that beautiful rose, it needs its thorns. The thorns definitely have a place, and protect that beautiful rose. And I realized that my dad has definitely had his place, profound place and effect on my life. And I'm just so grateful. I love you, Dad, and I miss you.